Hey folks, this is Vince with Dad's Gaming Addiction, and welcome to another episode of Vintage Story. Today we'll be talking about food. Hope you're not hungry. So, we'll be looking at baking and juicing today, and the reason I'm covering those two things is because, well, in my playthrough, I ended up with a lot of berries, and they were going to go bad, and I needed to figure out a way to use them before they went to waste. So baking and juicing seem to be great ways to turn those short-lived berries into something more long-term. Now, because this is a food-heavy episode, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that you can make a lot of meals and subsist off that with just a cooking pot. The latest patch actually added a whole bunch of recipes to the survival handbook that you can make in order to get by for a whole lot longer for a lot less. And what I make all depends on what I have available. If I only have one piece of meat, for example, I'll throw that into a soup because you only need one slot for the protein. Whereas if I have two meat that I can cook in a meal, I'll make something else like meat stew. So look at the different ingredients that you have, and when you see one that's about to go to waste, find a way to incorporate it into a meal rather than just cooking it outright and eating it, or just eating it outright. You'll get a lot more longevity out of cooking it and using it as an ingredient for a larger meal. So one of the ways that I like to make the berries that I have last longer is the fruit press. However, in order to craft the fruit press, you're going to need some resin. And resin is probably one of the most difficult resources to find in this game. But once you do find it, you can keep coming back to the same spot and continue to harvest it. See, this resin will only grow on particular trees and will always grow on that same tree. But if you cut down the tree or cut it off, it won't grow there anymore. So you need to mark the location, come back to it on a regular basis, and continue harvesting that resin. And it's only found on pine trees and I believe acacia trees. So assuming that you can find those two particular trees and find resin on said trees, well, it's going to be tough at first. But again, once you find them in the environment, mark them on your map, and then come back to them on a regular basis. Make sure you hold in the right mouse button when you're harvesting it rather than cutting it with the left mouse button and destroying it. So to make the fruit press, you're going to need a number of things. So you're going to need a copper hammer, copper chisel, copper rod, some boards, fat, and 2 resin. Now, the hammer, the rod, the chisel, they can be copper, no problem. Or if you're more advanced into the game, you can use higher quality ones, but you're fine with copper across the board. Now, one quick tip. Make sure that you're putting a bucket underneath the fruit press before you start doing anything, because if you start squeezing the berries that you put in there and there's no bucket underneath, the juice will go right onto the ground and go to waste. Don't make that mistake. I did. So you need to craft maybe an extra bucket or two that you have on hand. Make sure there's a bucket underneath before you start compressing it. When you put the berries inside the fruit press, it'll turn into wet mash, and then you just hold in the click button in order to just turn the handle, and it'll start squeezing the juice down into the bucket. And you might want to wait an extra couple of seconds because the juice doesn't fall out right away. So you're going to be getting dry mash once you're done with that process. That dry mash can be used for a couple of things, which I'll get into in a minute. But what I like to do is I like to take the juice from that bucket and put it into a nearby barrel, and then just continue juicing until I'm out of berries. And then once I'm done completely just squeezing berries, I'll go ahead and move that juice maybe into the basement of my cellar. Now, you can just drink the juice if you want to. However, you can also turn it into wine if you seal the barrel up and wait a while. The wine will last for a lot longer, but it does have alcoholic effects, which will cause your camera to sway, among other things. Now, you can do one of two things with the dry mash that you have. You can't eat it, but you can put it into a small trough or a large trough and possibly feed particular animals. Like the large trough will allow you to feed deer, gazelle, goat, and so on. Or you could put that dry mash just somewhere else and let it rot and then use it for fertilizer whenever it's all said and done. Next, we're going to talk about baking in the clay oven. First, you have to make a clay oven, which isn't that difficult. It's just time consuming. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is put some flint onto a fire pit and just let it cook for a while. You can turn flint into calcinized flint chunks by doing this. Now you're going to take that calcinized flint and bring it over to your quern. I'm always mispronouncing that. And you're going to grind that up into powdered calcinized flint. So there's an extra step there that you got to do in addition to cooking the flint up. Once you have that powdered calcinized flint, you can combine it with, say, red clay. I believe blue clay works as well. But you're going to combine the powdered calcined flint with some clay, and that will make fire clay. And just like with regular clay, you're going to look at the ground and just use that fire clay on the ground in order to bring up a recipe menu. The clay oven is one of those recipes, so it's unique to this particular type of clay. Go ahead and mold it and you're ready to go. You don't have to bake it in a fire kiln or anything like that. Once you mold it, it's ready to go. Next, you're going to need to take any rye grain that you have or spelt grain, whatever kind of grain you have, and you're going to grind it up in the quern, which will turn it into flour. Next, take, say, a bowl of water and combine it with the flour, and that'll make dough. The next step is to just warm up the oven. Don't put the food in yet, just warm up the oven. I use about 4 pieces of firewood, and then I light it on fire, and then I wait for that firewood to disappear so that the oven is nice and hot. Now, if you're going to bake the dough as is, then you can just totally do that. You can just throw in your spelt dough, your rye dough, whatever dough that you happen to make, and just throw it in there and wait. But you need to keep an eye on it because it is possible to char the bread. Now, that will increase the amount of time that you have before it spoils, but at the same time, you're not going to get a whole lot of nutrients and like satiety out of that. So you want to just take it out just as soon as it's done. Now, if you want to get fancy, make a pie. Pies are great ways to use those leftover ingredients that you really can't use anywhere else. And there are a couple of different pies that you can make too. There's fruit pies, there's meat pies, and luckily the Survival Handbook has instructions for you on how to make each one. The first step to making a pie is just to put a table down first. You'll need a table to craft it, and that's just done via boards. And then take 2 dough and put them on that table. For the next step, it's just about filling up the pie with various fillings. I use berries, leftover berries that I don't feel like using for the juicing process. I just throw the berries right in there until it's full. Now, I believe this next step is optional. You can take 2 dough and then add it as a top layer. And what's cool is you can even use your knife to change the design of the top layer. Little things like that in this game just really make me happy. Next, you're going to put the pie into a preheated oven. That means just like with the bread that we baked earlier in this video, you're going to have to warm it up first with some firewood, wait for the firewood to go away, and then put the pie in right after. And you need to watch it because, again, it can burn. Take it out as soon as it's done, and you're good to go. Once you put it back on the table, you can use your knife to carve out pieces of the pie so that you don't have to, eat the whole thing in one sitting. And there you have it. Hopefully you found this video helpful and enjoyable. Don't forget to like and subscribe. That way you can stay up to date with any new content I happen to publish. This is Vince. Thanks for watching. Catch y'all next time. Take care.